Hello and welcome. In this video, I'm gonna show you how we can perform unsupervised and supervised classification using ArcGIS tools. So first, we need to clip the whole image by our study area. So try to develop your own region of interest where you can process the supervised and unsupervised image classification. This will help you reducing the processing time, and this will make your analysis much faster. Okay, so we will limit our analysis to this study area. For that, you go to the drawing tool and click polygon and change this into shapefile. Okay, so you will have that, and you can delete this. So this is our region of interest boundary. So we will try to limit our analysis within this window of analysis. So try to extract, go to spatial analyst, extraction, extract by mask. Give the input, which is the masked out image, if you masked out image, and the mask data is your region of interest, and save the data by, it is, I can call it image with region of interest. Okay, .tif is my file name for the satellite image, which is clipped. Now I have the satellite image clipped by my study area, but as you can see, it looks very odd. So we need to correct this kind of visualization error by stretching your image. Go to property and stretch type, select standard deviation. This type of stretching technique will correct this kind of error most of the time. Yes, as you can see it is now, it looks good at least. Okay, it can be visualized. Okay, you can see the water body, the forest, the agricultural land, the built up area, and the like. Okay, this is the area we are going to process. Okay, now let's talk about something about unsupervised image classification. So in unsupervised classification, the user has to select number of classes, has to define the number of classes. How can you determine the number of classes? Before you click on ISO cluster unsupervised classification, you can estimate that by making reconnaissance survey of your study area. Okay, even without undertaking reconnaissance survey, you can estimate how many classes you are going to have. For example, forest is 1, water body is 2, grassland is 3rd, the 4th is shrubs and bushes, the 5th cropland, 6, built up area 7. At least you can identify 7 classes, but for the time being we are interested in having 5 classes. Okay, so the user specifies the number of classes, and the spectral classes are created solely based on the number of information in the data. Okay, the pixel value for each of the bands will be processed, will be analyzed by some kind of clustering algorithm, and finally it will create spectral clusters. Okay, so the pixels in unsupervised classification are grouped together into classes or into spectral clusters based on their spectral similarity. So the result of unsupervised classification is spectrally similar spectral clusters. So classes are not the result of unsupervised classification. There is a distinction between a class and a cluster. A class is a category with known name. that means forest, residential area, water body. These are classes. So these are not the result of unsupervised classification. After unsupervised classification, the thing that you get as an output is spectrally similar clusters. Okay, so clusters are naturally occurring groupings in the data based on the statistics of their attributes. Okay, so the name of the algorithm used in creating cluster is ISO cluster. ISO is a prefix for iterative self-organizing. So it's a method of performing cluster. So to do that, you turn on the image classification toolbar and go to the ISO cluster image unsupervised classification. And once you did that, you evaluate your results, whether or not it is sufficient. Now let's see the implementation of unsupervised classification in ArcGIS. Okay, we have this image, it's already grouped by our region of interest. So you can get this. In order to get this, right click on this and go to image classification. You can turn on it. You can check in this image classification tool. Under image classification, you can click on ISO cluster. As input, we use this image. So the number of classes, as I told you earlier, 5 is enough for the timing. Let's save output of our analysis. Let's call it unsupervised.tif. Okay, save. That's it. We can change these things. If your area is very small, you can change this into, you can minimize this number, but for the timing, let's leave it as it is. Okay, now let's click OK. Okay, now we have our result of unsupervised classification. Okay, you can examine the results by clicking effect, effect, and click on unsupervised and click on sweep. If you sweep it, for example, class number 4. What is class number 4? I think it is forest. What is class number 3? I think it is mixed inside. Okay, and you can also examine like this. What is green? Green is 2. 2 should be probably cropland, but I can see it is mixed. What about this class 5? It is urban built-up area. Okay, so there is a mixed classification, mixed classes. The built-up area is sometimes mixed with class 5. Class 5 is sometimes mixed with, with bare land or something like that. So, but I can simply say that water body is perfectly mapped by using this unsupervised classification. This type of classification may be sufficient for water body, but for built-up area, for forest area, it may not be sufficient. You start evaluating by including different additional auxiliary variables. Okay, if it's not sufficient, you do your unsupervised classification again by increasing the number of classes from 5 to 10, for example, to 15, for example. Okay, so the result of this unsupervised classification is spectral clusters. If you open the attribute, it doesn't tell you anything about the name of the classes. It tells you information about the different groupings. Okay, you can increase the number of classes and see the result. For example, let's have a look at classification, ISO data. The input is this. Let's increase into 15, for example. And let's save by saying unsupervised 15 classes. Okay, what do you think would be the result? Let's see. Because we can split, we can merge the classes. Okay, for example, the water body is now divided into 2 types of water qualities. Okay, for example, if we sweep it, okay, now make the 15 class into sweep and sweep it. If you see, and if we uncheck this, okay, we understand that there are 2 types of you know, water depths. This may be a shallow lake water. This may be deeper one. But the image or the 15 class unsupervised classification result is showing us some kind of, you know, unique class is coming. You know, it shows you depths or water quality or sedimentation or something like that. So increasing the number of classes in unsupervised classification will increase object discernibility. Okay, if you go to the airport, okay, if you go to the built-up area, you will find a lot of mixed pixels. Okay, so this will increase the chance of you know, identifiability of objects in unsupervised classification. So look at this one, for example. This is a forest. We know this is forest, okay? But you see mixed spectral clusters. We don't know, actually. For example, this color, class 12, is forest. We know it is forest, okay? And additionally, class 14 is also forest, okay? But it is again mixed with another class. To avoid this spectral confusion, what should I do is the good question, okay? Now let's continue to lab session 6 to how do we make supervised image classification. This classification type may improve the result, okay? So supervised image classification, it is different. As the name implies, it is going to be supervised by the expert. Okay, the expert or the analyst is going to train the software or the algorithm by taking some training samples, okay, and do some kind of statistical similarity based on the training sample, and it will provide you the final result. Okay, this is the whole procedure. So the first stage is the user collects training data. Okay, so the user, it is assumed that the user knows some of the areas in the image. Okay, using points of, you know, known identity, the algorithm is going to classify the other areas based on the samples. Okay, the first thing is data exploration and pre-processing. Under this, it involves running principal component analysis. The purpose of this principal component analysis is to reduce the dimensionality of the data. So sometimes you might encounter 10, 12, 15 spectral bands to be processed. So you don't need to process all those 12, 15 spectral bands, because most of the satellite, you know, bands are highly correlated. Okay, the correlation might reach up to 0.9, 0.8 or something like that. So if bands are correlated, they are, you know, delivering similar type of information. So you don't need to process both of them. You need to avoid the redundant information by running principal components, only focusing on the primary 3 principal components can contain, you know, probably 97 or more than 90% of the variation in the whole satellite image. So you don't need to process, you know, 10 or 15 bands. You just focus on the most important unredundant satellite bands for your processing. This will also reduce the computational time of your computer, and also, you know, it will increase object discernibility. And you can also create multi-band image. You can create a subset of bands. So if you decide that only 3 of the bands are highly unredundant and very important, you can create a subset of multispectral bands. Okay, and the next thing that you need to do is collecting training samples. Okay, you need to collect training samples you can do this by going to the field or by using high resolution satellite imagery, and you evaluate the training samples, whether they are, you know, significantly different, whether they help your classification process, and then you create the signature file. Okay, you create signature file only for supervised classification. What is a signature file? A signature is a subset of cells that are representative of a class or a cluster. Okay, this is a signature file that you can create in ArcGIS. Okay, the statistics of signatures are stored in a signature file that will be used to classify all cells in the intersection of the input bands. Okay, so and then once you save the signature file, these are the training sample, and based on the training sample, different statistics will be computed and saved in the signature file. Using this signature file, the supervised classification uses maximum likelihood algorithm to use this training sample and classify the whole satellite image. Okay, you'll find this under classification and maximum likelihood. Let's see its implementation in ArcGIS. Okay, so let's save it. Now this is our image. In order to run supervised classification, we have to create first training samples. Okay, for that, make sure this is active and make sure your image that you are going to process is active under this. Okay, so create training sample. Okay, now use this draw polygon to collect training samples. If you click, I know this is forest area. If you don't have any information about this site, you need to go to the field and get some information. But I know this area, that this is a forest area. Okay, this is Zage. Okay, Zage forest. And the next training sample is water body. This is Lake Tana. I know this area, so I may call it water body. Okay, so I may select different color, and this is I may select it's a forest, so let me give it a forest color. Okay, and the next is let's use another one. I know this is cultivated land, so I start digitizing this. Okay, so this is cropland. Okay, and another training area. I know this is a built up area, it's a city, so digitize. Yeah, and this is built up area. And one last thing is grassland or wetland. Okay, I know this area. This could be a wetland area or a grassland area or wet grass area. Okay, this could be grassland. Okay, so I can leave this color as it is, and you can save this training sample. Okay, region of interest. Let me call it training samples. Samples. Okay, training sample. Okay, it is saved. You can save this as a polygon, as a vector file, or you can save the whole signature. Okay, let's save the whole signature under under C D test. It is signature. Okay. Okay, it is saved as a signature now. Okay, now the next thing is running your maximum likelihood classification. Run maximum likelihood classification, or sometimes you can classify interactive supervised classification. Okay, let's run for the time being maximum likelihood classification. The input is image. The input signature is the one we saved it earlier in the image region of interest signature file. You click and you save the file. It is maximum likelihood classification. MLC. This is the first MLC that we are trying. Okay, so let's click OK. Okay, now it is very much fast. Okay, now we can click clear training samples. We don't need it anymore. Now let's examine the result of the MLC. Okay, the result of the MLC. When we examine it, you know, the water body is captured in different forms, shallow, deep, or different qualities, but I can see the forest area is mapped very well. Okay, let's see the effect, and let's sweep it. Okay, it should be image. Okay, the MLC. Okay, yeah, at least it is better, you know, the classification is better, you know. Why? Because it is much better than unsupervised classification. So if you examine on the airport area, for example, the runway is properly mapped. Okay, class 4 is showing us some kind of built-up area. Okay, there are also grassland, there are also shrubs and bushes. You can see the built-up area is well mapped, and even you can see the stadium. Okay, it is well mapped. Okay, so this is, but another very important thing that we can say something on is the built-up area is mapped very well, but it is confused with some, you know, seemingly urban, you know, areas in here. For example, this area is not urban area, but the spectral confusion is there. Okay, even sometimes the water body is confused with built-up area reflectance. So you should do some more analysis in order to reduce the confusion and increase the accuracy of your classification. Okay, now we are going to, is my classification accurate? How accurate is that? So before you assess the accuracy of the image classification, sometimes you need to do post-classification processing. Okay, what is post-classification processing?